The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Welcome to the Cashman Mind, Body, Spirit show today. Today's subject, I think you'll find very interesting because it is a severe problem in the United States and across the world. It's about breast cancer. But this show tells you the science and method of preventing the disease 50 to 70% of the time, based on science. And if you adopt these habits, you can avoid tremendous disability and even death. 40,000 people in this country, 40,000 people in this country are dying from breast cancer. And if you can prevent 50 to 70% of that, I think it's pretty significant. And it's not that hard. So I hope you enjoy this show. We have about 220,000 new cases of breast cancer a year. A large number. It's the most common cancer in women. Men can get it too, but the incidence is low, but there is men at breast, after all. And they can also develop it. Usually, there are about 5 main things a person can do, at least 5 things that produce this 50 to 70%. Okay? And I'll discuss those in detail. One is not to smoke. That's one, which is incidentally, another cause of cancer in men and women, and it's the second most common cause of cancer in women, is smoking. But breast cancer is twice as common. Twice as common, yeah. And not drinking too much. If you don't drink, don't start. But they have shown, actually, the latest findings are that no amount of drinking is safe to avoid cancer. Mm-hmm. They used to say 2 or 3 times drinks a week, okay? But I saw some of the latest research that says any alcohol is potentially a causative factor. Interesting, so we need to pay attention to it. So we have cigarettes, alcohol is another one. Lack of exercise is also a big one. And does that mean a tremendous amount of exercise? No, maybe a half hour, 5 times a week, maybe not even that. Maybe a good walk in nature for 30, 45 minutes. That alone, because it's a stress reliever for that. And it helps control our weight. So weight is a big one too. Being overweight is a big cause of breast cancer. Part of the reason is that fat has estrogen. And the length of time that you are exposed to estrogen increases the breast cancer rates. Like if a child starts menstruating at an early age and menopause, say at a later age, that lengthens that period of time they've been exposed to estrogen, which is a causative factor for cancer. So weight, alcohol, smoking affected. They say stress is not a causative factor, but I don't agree with that. I saw that in one of these other books. I'm going to hold some books in a while, because stress is what causes you to eat. Yeah, sugar is a booger. Okay, makes you gain weight. Estrogen level increases, so I think stress can be a causative factor. Exposure to toxins is an important one, including having been irradiated, say from another cancer, lung cancer. They irradiate the breast. The cancer, breast cancer, is more common in people who've had radiation on parts of their body. Exposure to toxins increases it. Hairsprays and all kind of deodorants, things like that. There's some correlation. It's not totally clear cut. So toxins, exposure to radiation, alcohol, cigarettes, your weight have an effect. What about age? What about, is it age related? Yeah, breast cancer is more common past age 50. 80% of the breast cancers are age 50 and over. I'm continuing down the subjects in the book that I wrote on it. I'd like to show this to you. Breast cancer prevention is the cure. And really, what's the point here? If you could prevent 70% of it through proper lifestyle activities, which I'll tell you about, and a few other things, then you have no cancer. When we do testing, you already have cancer. What I'm speaking about is to prevent it in the first place. You won't believe this, but when they autopsied women who just died of other causes, they find 39% have some abnormal breast cells in their body. They have some evidence of breast cell in their body already. So that it advances and converts to something is based on your lifestyle activities, okay? So we mentioned age, and again, the 80% occur after age 50. Breast cancer is uncommon below age 30. That's interesting. Since there's estrogen in fat, an overweight child would have a longer and larger exposure to estrogen and have increased rates of cancer. An obese child, for example, would have increased rate of breast cancer because they've had increased levels of estrogen starting maybe as early as age 2, 3, 5, or 6. So an overweight child has increased rates of breast cancer. And we already spoke about the time of menstruation increases the exposure to estrogen. So menses can start at age 8, 9, or 10, or they could be obese at age 2, 3, 4, or 5. So because you're writing your genetic script the day that you're born, so the things that you do affect your genetic expression. Breast cancer is very estrogen sensitive, okay? And so in stress, I mentioned already, in Susan Love's book on breast cancer, they're saying that stress doesn't seem to affect it. But again, I told you my disagreement with that, because stress causes you to eat a quick fix, a donut, or some sugary product. So again, it's a judgment-free zone, okay? I'm just making some suggestions. There's hereditary breast cancer that runs in some families, but it's difficult sometimes to determine whether it is hereditary or not. If breast cancer occurs before age 50, it's more likely to be hereditary. But if there's breast cancer in multiple relatives, the chances increase. If it's across 2 or 3 generations, the odds are there can be some genetic change. But breast cancer can be caused, you would need almost 100 changes in genes to produce it. They speak about the BRCA1, the BRCA2 genes. Those are genes that 1 to 2% of the people have. And what they actually do is to change the gene expression. They actually are helpful. But if the gene is turned off, the people that have that have increased chance of breast cancer. But again, only 1 to 2% of the people have it. And by the time they're hitting the 70s and 80s, about 80% of the people who have that have both genes, BRCA1, BRCA2, will probably have had breast cancer. But the gene expression is related to their habits, which we spoke about, from smoking to drinking to being overweight, for not exercising, for example. So whether the gene ever gets expressed or not depends on your activities. The ends of our chromosomes are things called telomeres. They have genes on them, and they are affected by what you do. When you're born, or even still in the uterus, the baby, their genetic structure can be changed by the activities of the mother. They could even be affected before conception, what the genetic code of the mother and father were, and back even one further generation. So epigenetics is something they're publishing more about. So the habits of the mother and father, and maybe even their parents, can affect the genetic structure of the baby. Only 5%, believe this is hard to believe, but it's in the literature, of your genetic code that determines through RNA what our body looks like, what our metabolism is all about. That part of genetic code is written only about 5%. Yeah. So the things the mother does, the things that are done to the infant, or then the child does, will write or as an adult, will then write the genetic script, which gives us a wonderful opportunity to write our own genetic script. So heredity plays a part, but what we do, our activity, is 90% of it. That's Rudy's good news. So to teach prevention, why do I say prevention is the cure? We can avoid breast cancer 50 to 70% of the time. It may be even a little bit higher than that by a healthy lifestyle, for example. And this should be emphasized. I rarely speak to a woman, I will admit, that knows this. That's why I wrote this book. Yeah. They seem to collect all the money in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They send it to Indianapolis, where they think they're going to invent a drug. Pharmaceutical companies invent a drug that'll cure breast cancer. There's about 50 to 100 genes that affect whether you get breast cancer or not, that a drug might affect. But who's going to, 100 drugs, when I can prevent 50 to 70%, you would think that these associations would run for these books, not just mine, 2 other books, which I'm going to hold up for you shortly, and have women especially, but also some men, read these books and spend their time teaching them how to avoid breast cancer. That's what I'm all about today. And that's why I say prevention is the cure. So the gene expression of cancer is different at different ages, okay? The ones with the BRCA gene, there may be 1.8% incidence at age 30, 44% at age 44, 70% at age 70. Also, ovarian cancer can be associated with that, increases with age. At age 70, the rate is around 39% who have the BRCA gene, okay? Uterine cancer, okay, again along the female line, is 75% related to being overweight. I had an oncologist confirm that to me recently when I saw her in the elevator, and she confirmed 75% of uterine cancer is related to being overweight, which probably means it's related to estrogen and progesterone, and that can be a nasty cancer. I would wonder if pancreatic cancer isn't on that too. No one knows for sure why it starts, but I think it's probably along the same line. So Dr. David Katz, a very famous public health official, and maybe he's the best in the country, because he really teaches prevention big time. He wrote a book, and the cover of his book, he is on there that I think 80% of type diabetes could be avoided, 50% of cancer could be avoided by proper lifestyle. And I read his book a number of times. So I think I like confirmation of what I'm talking about. So that is confirmation. So we mentioned being overweight is a problem. So there are some women which are of higher risk than others because smoking or drinking and overweight, and they're not exercising, and they're full of stress, the rate goes up. And you may think that screening that's how you're going to deal with it, but the problem is screening is important. Be sure to get all the screening that's recommended, but if something shows up, you already have cancer. I'm teaching you how to not to get it in the first place, okay? And the odds of getting breast cancer by age 90 is around 12%. That's the absolute risk, okay? Absolute risk. And then we speak about relative risk. Relative risk would be if you, for example, you're smoking or a drinker, or you don't exercise, or you're not a normal weight. Each one has its own percentage. That's called relative risk. You have a 20% risk if you have BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene mutation, okay? But if you have good health habits, the odds will go down. You may not express it. And so reviewing the anatomy of the breast a little bit, for example, we have ducts and glands and fat tissue and lymphatic tissue and lymph nodes that are associated with it. And so starting at puberty, the ovary produces estrogen and progesterone needed to prepare for pregnancy each month. These also affect the breast. These hormones stimulate the breast in a cyclical pattern, can cause lumpiness and tenderness and pain. This pattern generally involves about 40 years of life, okay? So it affects the mind and appetite, and it can be complex. And then the pituitary gland at the base of the brain gets involved too, and this, we have about 50 hormones in our body, so that we don't feel the same way every day is understandable, okay? So certain times of the month, that the way the person feels, whether they're anxious or depressed, can be partly hormonally dependent. Yeah, you have to learn about that, especially in your brothers and sisters, and maybe your wife or a husband. And so the very beginning of breast cancer is when the cell divides. And we have, in our body, breast cancer cells are made every day. Most of us didn't know that, yeah. In our body, cancer cells are made every day. But our immunity, our Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, our lymphocytes, our T cells, our macrophages, our immune cells have a picture of what's going on in the body. And they destroy these cells that we have. But they need a lot of help, okay? So if we have an inflamed body, for example, from eating sugar all the time, cancer is a sugar feeder. Mm-hmm. It takes 13 molecules of sugar to make one ATP, the energy molecule, okay? Otto Warburg, 1936, in the 30s, in Germany, he survived Hitler, although he was Jewish. He got the Nobel Prize for Medicine, and he was awarded a second time, but they wouldn't allow him to accept the prize, but he survived the war. He thought he scientifically proved the molecular theory of cancer. It kind of went out of style when they discovered the helix, the DNA, in 1954, Watson and Crick, when they thought everything was dependent on one gene. Well, breast cancer has about 30 to 100 genes, not just one gene. There are a few cancers that are just one gene, and we've cured some because we could take a drug and aim at that one gene. But most cancers are many genes. That's why lifestyle is very important. And I will stress that to you again and again. You know, I think the whole public is convinced that the drug company is going to solve the problem. I'm glad they're doing research, but they are not going to solve the problem. There's hope in the future. I noticed recently that the metabolic theory, which is the Warburg theory, is coming back. In other words, the way cancer cells, they run the energy in there, that if they could interrupt the metabolic path with one drug, the metabolization of energy, then the cells would die. So the Warburg theory, I think, is coming back. I think they're coming back. I just finished reading a book called The One Cell, the first cell. So, but in that book, was talking strictly for research on that first cell. He didn't mention what occurred before the first cancer cell. That's what I'm about to work on beforehand, not to even see the first cancer cell, on metabolic pathways, the metabolism of a cancer. So for a cancer patient to eat a vegetable, fruits of color, low sugar diet, not a diet, just a way of eating, not a diet, just a way of eating. They're going to be less sugar, and you're not feeding the cancer cells, you're not causing them to grow, so you can prevent it from happening. You can perhaps prevent it from spreading or metabolizing, because every cell in your body needs energy, but you're not giving it energy. Mm-hmm. I hope you understood what I was talking about there. So our DNA, gives instructions to our body through RNA, which does the actual work, tells the proteins what to do with the structure of your body. So it's the basis of life. We have a genetic code. We have the code of 2.8 billion messages, our DNA, okay, which are alterations of the genes A, T, G, and C, just 4, but their permeation, and this has all been scientifically discovered the last 70 years, and we have 21 amino acids. That's our proteins, and how they are permeated in this permeated through this message A, T, G, and C determines the expression of our genetic structure, which can be greatly affected by what we do, whether we exercise, what toxins we bring into our body. So our proteins are our body's building blocks, okay, our body built. BRCA1, BRCA2 genes are germ cells mutations which are found in some hereditary breast cancer, and they're turned off. They can't do the job of repairing DNA because they're turned off. So if you have both genes, you have a 50% chance of having some gene expression, which is then affected by the lifestyle of the person who has it. So cancer is the result of multiple gene mutations, usually not just one, with occasional exception. Many can have mutated cells, but they don't grow because of good health habits. We don't smoke. We don't drink. We eat the right food. We exercise. So odds are, remember I said, our body makes cancer cells every day. Many have mutated cells. Just think of what I said earlier. Autopsies on women who had no breast cancer, just died from something else, 39% had mutated cells. Yeah. In our genes, besides expressing themselves, but what is this cell? How does it increase in number? It's through stimulation, through also increased angiogenesis, increased blood vessels, which are produced by some cells. So if you can cause blood vessels to grow, they can be cancerogenic because cancer cells need blood vessels, okay? So we've known about our immune system for a good 100 years, our Army, Navy, Air Force, the macrophages, the T cells, that our Army, Navy, and our Air Force all over our body, our spleen, our lymph nodes, a lymphatic system, which is a system like blood vessels, not quite as detailed, that run throughout our body. They run along the blood vessels, and our immunity is our Department of Defense. So an adaptive immune system kicks in as a backup, helps defend us against cancer cells, and some people have better immunity than others. No doubt about it. You know, one family member of mine gets a cold all the time. I rarely get a cold, so maybe my immune system is a little better. Why? I don't know. Maybe I've been exposed to more bacteria and viruses early in life, and now my immunity is stronger. Who knows for certain? But then again, I'm not harming on purpose my immune system by having bad health habits. I'm on 0 medications at age 39 for the 44th time this year. Okay, yeah, add that up. And on no medications, so I'm not bringing in toxins to harm my DNA. I try to lead a positive life, exercise, walk in nature, all things that help build your immunity, okay? And so the BRCA gene, as I mentioned, helps repair mutations in your genes. So when you have a dysfunctional BRCA1, BRCA2, you're more likely to get a cancer, but especially breast cancer. To get your mammograms done, for example, there are also some enzyme tests done. see if there's inflammation in your body as a cancer screener too. Homocysteine, for example, CRP. The CRP is elevated and you're overweight. You wonder, does that person have cancer in their body? It's a possibility. Since cancer is a sugar feeder, they have now what's called PET scans, where they can inject a radioactive sugar, and cancer is a sugar feeder, and the body, if you had, say, cancer spread all over the body, it would just light up, yeah. So this is common to see if you had cancer spread, for example. And I explained to you already pretty much about epigenetics upon your genes, their telomeres and your chromosomes, which you can alter by your habits, your lifestyle, because they can repair mutations. They can cause mutations. They can repair mutations. So you can affect your, especially the habits of the mother with the infant in the uterus, can greatly affect what's going to happen to a child. They're underweight, they're overweight, whether they have diabetes or not, whether they have cancer or not, affected by the genetic structure of the infant. The mother can alternate it by smoking, by drinking, by being stressful all the time, steroids circulating in her body, not exercising, not doing something relaxing like reading to the child or playing music to the child, which can affect the intrauterine child quite a bit. Okay? And so the discovery of our genes by Watson and Crick changed our way of thinking about it, but now we may be going back to the Warburg theory of metabolism of cancer, which I tend to think the answer would be where we could stop the metabolism right with one drug right there, instead of working the metabolic pathway, and instead of heading for an individual gene where we have so many permeations. I think it'll be difficult. So the telomeres are your future. They're your future. 95% of your genetic script hasn't been written when you're born. You can write it. It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay? And if you avoid breast cancer, for example, by keeping your normal weight and exercising, you also won't get type 2 diabetes, odds are. And you'll avoid maybe 30 other chronic diseases because you're trying to avoid breast cancer, and now you're avoiding type 2 diabetes, which has with it about 30 chronic diseases, including 75% of Alzheimer's disease, thyroid disease, blindness. 90% of dental problems are related to the amount of sugar that you eat. So if you're trying to prevent breast cancer, or if you have it, trying to avoid it from spreading, to eat a low sugar, high dense nutrient way of eating, of course, it would be the answer. And you're going to starve your cancer cells. So the opportunity is there. And here's 10 recommendations for cancer prevention are drawn up from WCRF and AICR expert report. Okay? Be as lean as possible without becoming underweight. Okay? You can get underweight too. Be physically active for at least 30 minutes every day. Limit sedentary habits. Okay? I played pickleball, tennis, tap dance. Does that qualify? Oh, I'm a man, but I can get it too. Okay? Avoid sugary drinks because of sugar. Okay? Fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is a big cause of cancer. It's in all fast foods. Fast foods is your enemy. You want to eat slow foods. Eat more variety of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes such as beans. Limit consumption of red meats, beef, pork, lamb. Avoid processed meat, fast meat. Okay? Remember, any alcohol, and this here I mentioned 2 or 3 a week, okay? But the latest research I read about, no alcohol is safe. Interesting. Limit consumption of salty foods and processed with salt, okay? Don't use supplements to protect against cancer. That's not going to do it. It's best for mothers to breastfeed exclusively for up to 6 months and then add other liquids and foods, okay? The best thing for the child is to breastfeed 2 years, okay? Because mother's milk is in the omega-3 fats, the good fats. That's what your brain is making up. You want a smart kid? Breastfeed for a long time. And then what I read recently is you're not going to breastfeed beyond 6 months, and then you give it cow's milk. I read a book called Whitewash by Joe Keon. I myself would not give my child cow's milk. Cow's milk is meant for baby cows, different proteins, different carbohydrates. A veterinarian, they know you don't give type of milk from one species to another species. The animal probably would die. In humans, they wouldn't just die from drinking breast milk, but there are a lot of complications, increasing rates of cancer, for example, lactose intolerance. So the cancer prevention is huge, and as I already mentioned, exercise in breast cancer, the science of it. Exercise lowers circulating estrogen level, okay, and 5 to 7 hours of vigorous exercise can lower the estrogen and progesterone level by about 20%. Mm-hmm. So that's important. And females that work out of a sweat for at least 5 hours or more a week apparently get significant protection from cancer rates. Walking a moderate pace for an hour, 5 days a week also has been found to lower the risk of breast cancer. I'm just quoting you different studies. So in other words, walking every day or in place, or altering slow with fast, walking slow, associated with significant lowering breast cancer rates. This has been proven in studies, okay? And so I'd aim for first class immunity. Can stress affect it? We mentioned this before. Let me quote to you the work of Dr. LaShan. And I'm just quoting him here. He was a very famous psychiatric oncology specialist. Lived in New York. Yeah. Found out he lived 2 blocks from my house. I never met him, but I just read in the book. He lived close to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I lived within 2 blocks of it. How lucky could I be? He said 76% of 500 patients he was studying with breast cancer had a history of emotional problems or severe stress. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's right in his book. And he ran these studies because he had taken one lady, that's in his book, who had metastatic breast cancer, spread all the body. He took her to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Remember, he lived close to there, just like I did. He took her to lunch once a month, spoke to her, and to teach her things. And then he would walk her through her favorite art in the museum. Her favorite art. Restudied it in 5 years, no breast cancer. Does one case prove anything? No. But it means something. So he started studying other people. So he found out when he studied 500 people, 76% had stress in their history who had cancer. Only 10% of the control group without cancer had this pattern. So stress has a lot lower incidence in people. 76 versus 10, okay? And other studies were done, and hopelessness and frustration are commonly found in cancer patients years before they're ever diagnosed. And Dr. Green, many patients with leukemia and lymphoma had a history of despair, hopelessness, and discontinuity. That's in the literature, okay? Dr. Kissen, heavy smokers, the ones that have cancer, were found to have high rates of chronic stress. So even affected them. And the reason a lot of them were smoking, was stress in their life, and they're lighting up, which caused another problem, okay? And here's Dr. LaShan again. Patient's youth in the cancer patient was marked by feelings of isolation, despair, intense interpersonal relationships. Previous strong personal relationships removed, death, divorce, retirement. Despair was bottled up. So I think he proved it. It's a very good book to read. Leshan. But it's chronic stress. Acute stress is over quickly, okay? The elephants there, the tigers there didn't eat you, and you're fine, okay? But chronic, long-term stress, there's loss of white cells, enlarged adrenal glands, enlarged hearts, weight loss, and death. This is a proven theory of chronic stress, which was proven by Hans Selye, S-E-L-E-Y. Hans was a German like me in Toronto, and he studied long-term stress, okay? And he found, I think he was studying mice or rats, did their adrenal glands enlarged, that their hearts enlarged, elevated blood pressure. And Hans Selye studied this for years and years. And so his definition of stress was inability to cope with perceived real or imaginary threats to our physical, emotional, psychological well-being is how you perceive it. One person may watch a stressful event and don't make much of it. Another person, it drives them bonkers. So another definition Selye used was non-specific response of the body to stress. Not any one thing, a combination, increased white cells, decreased appetite, enlarged adrenal glands, GI tract slowed down. And it was called the Selye syndrome. He was very famous, okay? So how you think affects the cancer rates, okay? So what can else cause cancer? Carcinogenic substances, nicotine, tar, chemicals, drugs, loss of immunity, stress, depression. There is some genetic predisposition, but it's not common. And 20% of cancers are caused by diet, especially breast, prostate, and colon cancer. Yeah. In Japan, the Japanese had very little cancer, but when they came to the U.S., the rate increased due to different foods they were eating and leading a lot more stressful life. So, but the cancer cell actually is a weak cell. That's the beauty of it. It's a reject. Cancer begins with a cell with incorrect genetic information. The body wants to get rid of it. It's not powerful. So we have a few cancer cells every day, okay? We make billions of them daily. So a mistake wouldn't be a surprise. So malignant cells are weak and disorganized. They could be defeated. So health habits become, more important. Most of the time they're killed. Every day we form some, okay? So our immunity is very important. You can improve your immunity through optimism, a walk, dancing, or tap dancing like I do, or chim sham shimmy along like I do. It's the latest tap dance thing I'm doing. So the will to live, love, I believe, positive and negative expectation, I believe, faith can increase spontaneous cure rate of cancers because it affects the neurotransmitters, neuropeptides, and hormones of your body. So faith and belief can indeed have tremendous effects on you. Mm-hmm. And Candace Pert, P-E-R-T, Molecules of Emotion, that book she wrote, tells you the science of it. And I think how we think is very important. And some doctors feel, and I would tend to agree, most of the patients I saw, it's more important to know what kind of a person has a disease than what disease the patient has. my 40 years of medical practice confirmed that. They'd come in, they want a spine fusion or one thing or another, and I always said, what's going on in your life? Well, my husband left me, I lost my job, I can't meet the bills, I got 6 kids. And they want an operation on their spine. When I thought the problem really was their stress and not their spine. This is real. That's what Candace Pert wrote about, and I learned a lot about. So to go in and tell a cancer patient they have only 6 months to live, like somebody you know real close, maybe it's related to me, a neurosurgeon said, Dad, I think I know what you're talking about. He had a cancer patient, and she asked how long he got to live. It was a malignant tumor, and he said 6 months and gave her no hope. Then there's a biopsy, he confirms it, it goes back to see her again, no hope. Doesn't say, I'm going to try everything I can. I'm going to, let's exercise more, let's eat the right food. Cancer is your sugar feed, let's put you in the right diet, let's get a second opinion. Or some hope. He gave her no hope, she was dead within a few days. Why? Because she was thinking so negatively that the steroids and the blood pressure shot up and developed pulmonary hypertension and heart spasms. It's almost like the voodoo effect. It's like he has said, you're going to die. As long as the patient believes it, the voodoo effect can't kill you. That's proven in medical literature. Yeah, that's proven in medical literature. Let me hold up a couple other books here for you that I encourage you to read. Dr. Susan Love's breast book, an excellent book, okay? An excellent book. Especially if you have it, you don't know what to do, whether to have your breast removed or not. You need to learn more. And that's an excellent book to read, and I've reviewed that. And here's another one from the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic breast cancer book is an excellent book here to read. And in some situations, you don't need a second opinion. Most of the time now, they don't do radical mastectomies anymore. They do a partial breast removal, and they can be more accurate, and they have certain drugs that are value, Herceptin, for example, and different drugs that have some value, and you need for your cancer doctor to deal with that. But the habits I'm talking about mainly preventing the problem in the first place. The Mayo Clinic book is an excellent book, and it also speaks about breast cancer and stress. And they also mention the short answer is no, but you can see clearly from my conversation that stress is going to have an effect, going to have a clear effect on it, many different methods. And heredity, like I said, mention a small part, but not a huge part. You're not necessarily what your genetic structure that you were born with. Remember, most of your genetic script has not been written, okay? So about 5-10% of breast cancers are hereditary. They're caused by inherent alterations in the chemical order of a genetic structure. But will that be expressed? It's up to you. Depends on your habit. Women with an alteration in BRCA1 or BRCA2 has about 45 to 80% lifetime chance of developing breast cancer. Men, they're also the same. Men, breast cancer is more commonly related to the BRCA2 gene. Defective BRCA1, BRCA2 genes, they don't do what they're supposed to do, account for about 40% of hereditary forms of breast cancer. But again, depends on whether you're allowing it to express itself. What are your lifestyle habits. Some people feel, and you've read it in the paper, some movie stars have had both breasts removed. Again, before considering such a thing, you should seek multiple consultations, do a lot of reading, get on the internet before you make up your mind. Some have had even, besides the breasts removed, they've also had the ovaries removed. Because remember I said there's increased chance of breast and ovarian tumors. Certainly if you want to avoid uterine cancer, to be of normal weight and exercise a little bit, that would cut out 75% of uterine cancer. So those are good things. Certainly to do. The methods of treating the breast cancer today is changing all the time, but let's look at it. They'll say that we've had great results, things are improving a great deal. What we have done is actually allowed people with breast cancer to live longer, okay, because of increased methods of treatment. But the incidence has not changed a great deal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because, let's face it, look around, okay? The rate of type 2 diabetes is increasing tremendously in this nation. Mm-hmm. That's something I deal with a lot. You can see them in my other lectures, which means weight gain is a common problem, although some people are thin as they have type 2 diabetes. Remember what I said? You're gaining weight, you're overweight, there's estrogens in fat, which will increase the breast cancer rate. So we have a very unhealthy nation. Type 2 diabetes, which is 75% overweight, is huge in this country. It is spreading across the world, even China. Yeah, even China. China is running a higher rate of type 2 diabetes than we do. So what's happening to the cancer rates? They're going up. Colin Campbell, you've written a number of books, because he with Chinese doctors, did a lot of research in different communities in China, studying health, because they were such isolated groups, they could really learn quite a bit. And the Chinese now are eating American food, gaining a lot of weight, and their cancer rates are going way up. So I encourage you, because if you're going to try to avoid breast cancer, the good news is you will also avoid about 30 chronic diseases: dementia, strokes, thyroid disease, dental disease, unannounced heart attacks. About 50% of heart attacks occur without warning. Mm-hmm. People just grab their chest, fall over. No angina, nothing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have found that Dr. Joseph Kraft published a book, 2006. His research was done in 1975. Many papers. You can see them on YouTube too, Joseph Kraft. Yet the first rise from the weight of diabetes is increasing the insulin level. Mm-hmm. People get now blood sugar tests. Well, you weigh 200 pounds, you're not diabetic. That doesn't prove it to me. We run a glucose tolerance test. We swallow sugar 1 hour, 2 hours. That's normal. You don't have diabetes. Doesn't prove it to me. If you run a serum assay, insulin assay test, fasting 1 hour, 2 hour, and that's normal, you're not diabetic. Okay? That's what Dr. Kraft proved, that we should be running serum insulins even in children. He studied children aged 3 to age 90, developed some curves, and then we could diagnose type 2 diabetes extremely early, because teenagers are getting it now. And then what would be the result? Reduce cancer rates, reduce breast cancer rates. Yet we're not doing it, although I'm presenting this information to lectures, TV, radio, public health clinics. It's getting out there, and some people are starting to run them now. At the Three Rivers Pharmacy in town here, I see patients for free on Friday morning. I did today. If you want this test done, come in. It's all typed out for you, signed by me. It's free. And go to any test, DuPont, next to Walgreens. I think cash, $120. I don't own the place, nothing to do with it. But you go to a hospital, it's going to cost a lot more. Then you will know, are you in the path to diabetes? Am I on the path to cancer? I think it's a good idea, because insulin is inflammatory. It makes cancer cells grow. It makes your arteries stiff. Yeah, it causes arthritis in your knees. So that's the first thing you want to aim at. So if you want to prevent increased rates of all types of cancer, but especially breast cancer, and especially for a woman. Remember, most common cancer is in a woman by almost 2 to 1 is breast cancer. And so the benefit to you through proper laboratory testing would be of a great benefit to you. Because the insulin is pro-inflammatory, and if it's pro-inflammatory, increased diabetes, increased rates of cancer, and you will be healthy. So to summarize things here a little bit, I think we need to emphasize big time breast cancer prevention. Hold up the book again. You can read it 2 or 3 nights. Easy to read. Amazon Books, you'd get it. If you can't afford it, come to see me at the Three Rivers Pharmacy by Concordia High. I'll give you a copy free. Why do I want to do that? I love you. I care about you. And it's doable. That's the beauty of it. This is something that you can, and as a doctor, to me, prevention is more important than treatment for most conditions. I've learned that over the years, and this is not difficult. You know, eat right. Take a walk in nature, sing a song, take tap dance lessons like I do, and you can avoid most illnesses, and your stress will go on the way, and you'll be smiling more, and maybe when you're 39 like me for the 44th time and on no pills, you'll say, Rudy, I think it worked. Thanks for a sense of humor. Watch my other shows. Also, Radio 95.7, The Velt, Public Access. We thank you for allowing this to happen. We'll see you next time. I'm a speaker at the Martin Luther King thing on January the 20th at the Grand View. And hope to see you there. Say hello. I'll also have a desk there with some books. And if you can't afford it, I'm going to give it to you. I want you to read it. They'll be in the library too. I love you. Thank you very much.